Wanted to touch base. I know that the last episode of Top Chef was so much fun to watch. It was Restaurant Wars, but before Restaurant Wars, we had a super special guest on, Chef Boulud, who I've admired for a long time. I've eaten at his restaurants, I've met him, and they didn't show the dish. So I thought that I would maybe walk you through it because it's a fun dish. And what it was I had to use olives in the quick fire, and the dish I chose to make was an olive flatbread, like a cracker with a tuna tartar. So I don't have any tuna right now, obviously hard to get certain things right now, but I do have lots of olives and thought that I would be able to show you this dish, A, because it's quick, B, because it's something you can easily do at home, and C, it's super delicious, and if I love anything, it's something that is quick and delicious at the same time. So I will post a recipe in our newsletter. So if you're following the newsletter, you'll be able to get the recipe. But essentially, this is a recipe that I've used for years online from one of my favorite food bloggers. Her name is Smitten Kitchen. I'm sure a lot of you know about her. And then I adapt it in a million different ways in the kitchen, from putting lots of vegetables into nuts. And this is just a base recipe that I've always added on to, so I encourage you to make it your own. We call that zoifying. To zoify something is to sort of like, take it in any wild direction of things you have on hand. So I have 230 grams of flour, which is about 1 3/4 cups of flour. We use an all-purpose flour from Quebec that's really, really good quality, so get the best quality flour that you can. To that, I'm gonna add 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Make sure you do a nice even teaspoon, okay? And then I'm gonna do, because I'm gonna add olives to this, I don't want it to be too salty, so I'm just gonna add, you always need salt in bread no matter what, so I'm just gonna add half a teaspoon. If you're not putting something in, put 3/4 of a teaspoon or a little bit more if you like it a little saltier. We always add salt on top as well. So now I have my dry ingredients here, so I'm just gonna mix those together. Give these a little mix here. Okay, just so it's evenly distributed. And then I'm gonna add in some olives. I have about half a cup of olives here. You could add a little bit more if you want, a little bit less. You can do green olives, whatever you have in the fridge. If you don't have olives, maybe you have capers. I wouldn't use anything wet, but anything that's sort of like dried down a little bit, sun-dried tomatoes maybe, would make a really, really great flatbread. So these are gonna go right into the flour. And then to that, the liquid that I'm gonna add is 1/3 of a cup of olive oil. Just add that in. Probably should have had a spatula here. And the recipe calls for water, but we always have stuff lying around, like a little bit of, this is like a tomato water. We made like some chopped tomatoes and we drained them, put a little salt and drain them. So we have this lovely liquid left over, and anybody who knows me know I do not like to waste anything. So I always keep some of this in the freezer. You could use chicken stock, you could use vegetable stock, anything that you think might add a little bit extra flavor. And of course, if you don't have anything, just use half a cup of water, totally fine. This is not the best way to do this. So I'm gonna measure half a cup in here. And that's it. I'm gonna mix it around because it has the baking powder in here. That's gonna allow it to rise and rise sort of quickly rather than doing something yeast did. I know there's a lot of people right now using sourdough starter. You could probably find a way to throw that in here. I am hopeless with my sourdough at this point, something I need to get on top of. So you're gonna mix this around. It's gonna be a dry-ish dough, but still a little bit sticky. Of course, I always like to get in here with my hands. So there's the dough. I'm just gonna make sure all the dry bits are absorbed. Kind of kneading it, but really just pushing it down with my hands. If you make this without olives, you'll notice that it's pretty stretchy and you want to let it rest. But because the olives are in here and they have a lot of fat in them, it sort of doesn't need to rest as much. But by all means, if you have an extra 10 or 15 minutes, just leave it to rest. It will do good. It will help it be lighter and flakier. All right, so here's the dough. It's beautiful olive dough. And what we're gonna do now is just roll it out. You have someone strong around. Again, with the olives in it, it makes it really easy to roll out. If you don't have olives and you just put herbs or something, you need a little bit of arm strength to get it really, really thin. And you do wanna get it really nice and thin so that it gets crispy. So What I like to do, put a tiny bit of flour on top, not on the bottom. You don't want it to slide around. You do want it to stick on your parchment. If you don't have any parchment at home, you could use wax paper, but do not put the wax paper in the oven. This will just, if you tried to roll this on your counter, you'd never get it off. So always a good thing to have a little bit of parchment around. So I like to start kind of slow, rolling it a little bit slow so I can get kind of a nice shape. And then, now that it's sort of this size, see that there? Now that it's this size, I really want to roll as kind of as thin as I possibly can without tearing it. If you have something in here like olives, it's going to want to tear anyways, so you kind of have to be very careful about how you're doing it. A tiny bit of flour, not too much. You don't want the top to be dry later on. We're going to cover it in some olive oil anyways. So I'm kind of like pushing down and pulling with all my force to the side. Sometimes I like to kind of hold the parchment at the edge of the table with my hip like that, press it all the way forward. If you have just a small sheet at home, obviously we're at the catering kitchen. If you have a small sheet at home, just cut this dough in half and do 2 sheets. I'll just tell you a little bit about putting that in the oven. You always want this to be right at the bottom rack. Put the rack in your oven at the lowest possible setting. You want as much heat as you can to come from the bottom. So sometimes I use just this edge of the rolling pin just to make sure that I get, you know, all these little pieces as flat as possible, as thin as possible without tearing it. I have a few tears, but actually that makes the dough kind of quite interesting. This looks so amazing. Cannot wait to eat this later. And you also want to color within the lines here. Stay within the edges of the parchment. If you find it spreading too much, you can always cut a piece, transfer it to another parchment, and bake it in stages in the oven. You know, you probably best to do one at a time in the oven. Okay, so I've gotten this probably as thin as I can get it. You can see it takes up the entire sheet. Then what I'm going to do is, I love to brush this with olive oil. If you don't have a brush, get in there with your fingers. I do it a lot. I tend to actually put a lot of olive oil on here because I don't like the cracker to look too dry on the top. Of course, it's a cracker, so it will have some dryness, but when you put something like tuna tartar on it, it will be nice and juicy and a perfect vehicle. Of course, this is amazing for cheese, or, I mean, we just eat it on our own. Just put it out as for snack time. So, okay, so that was about maybe a few tablespoons of olive oil, but use as much as you need here. If I'm not using olives, I do sprinkle a little salt on the top. You can sprinkle a little bit, Maldon or something like that. A nice coarse salt would be nice on here. Just a tiny bit. And then just to gild the lily, to really like take this to the next level, I've chopped up some pistachios. Use whatever you have. If you have something crunchy that you can put on top. And then I just sprinkle this right over the top. Like so. And then I just want to, they'll bake in, but I just like to kind of give them like an extra press down so that they're in the dough, really in the dough. And that's it. Again, one of these things that you really, really don't have to spend a lot of time on to end up with a super fantastic result. You're gonna put this in the oven. At a home oven, I would do it around 450 or 425. You're really gonna have to keep an eye on it for burning. Rack in the lower portion of the oven. And I would say anywhere from 6 to 7 minutes. As soon as you see the edges brown and it browning on top, try not to open the door, look through the window. If you have to open it, just open it quickly to check on it. If you've let this rest for a little while, and especially if you don't have something very fatty in it, you'll get some really nice bubbles going on in here, which is fantastic. And I'll show you the end result. This beautiful, gorgeous flatbread. My pistachios falling off. Make sure to press those on. And you see it's really, really crisp. I love to just put a huge piece like this onto a cheese board. And I mean, who doesn't love this? This is also amazing as a gift. You want to do something super quick and easy and drop it off at a friend's house and distance snack. These are so good. Christmas gifts, birthday gifts, have it in your pantry. They keep a long time, especially if you just use something dry like herbs. And there you go. Olive flatbreads with pistachio. Have fun, guys. Tune in next week, Top Chef episode 6. Bye.